Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to another session in this cloud data architecture series. In last few sessions, we have been discussing about the various design considerations while building data lakes and the cloud data warehouses. We have spoken about the file ingestion frameworks and some of the control tables. And in today's lecture, we are going to look at data governance. Uh, and very specifically data governance in data lakes. We are not going to discuss about the overall data governance strategies or data governance for warehouses. What we are going to cover in today's session is about data governance required in the data lakes. And we'll try to understand what governance is, what are the benefits, and in then we'll also look at a reference architecture, and we'll discuss that in details. So stay with me for next 15-20 minutes on this. So let's start. So what's a data governance? Okay, in general, what is a data governance? Um, Data governance comes along with a lot of different aspects and different flavors, right? And especially in when this governance is applied on data lakes, right? There are various categories within that we need to look after. Okay, and we need to ensure that if not all, but all the critical ones or the most critical ones, the most critical controls are in place to ensure that we have a proper data lake. Okay, and such data lakes which has data governance are often called as the governed data lakes also. Okay, that's the term sometimes people use for data lakes with a proper data governance. Um, so what is data governance? Okay, what is data governance? um okay, the first point is organizing the data, right? It's all about data, right? So organizing the data in a proper way, in a proper structure, in a proper scheme of things, so that it is easy to be accessed and it is easy to be discovered, right? That is the main point, right? See, we have a lot of data in our data lakes, right? But it's of no use if this data cannot be used for any insight generation or for predictions or for creating any recommendations, right? So just the data without being used is has no value. So it is important that the data should be organized in such a way that it becomes easy to discover, right? Second is maintaining the metadata, right? In data lake, what data lake is? It is nothing but a storage, right? It's nothing but a storage layer. So we are storing a lot of files or a lot of objects, right? Now we are just dumping this data. If you want to really use this data or understand what this data holds, to if you want to get insights from this, you need to maintain the metadata for all these objects. Metadata, as in, you'll have to create some tables so that this objects or these files can be accessed. You need to define a structure so that it can be queried easily by the users, right? So maintaining the metadata is very important. And by metadata, it can be all the aspects, all all the things that can define the data lying in the storage in a better way. It can be the schema of the tables created on top of these files. It can be various tags associated with this. It can be the along with the technical metadata, it can be the business glossary, right? All these aspects form the metadata. Third is having the right access control to access this data, right? So even if we have created the tables, there should be a proper access control to ensure that only the right set of people, right, the right users, the relevant users get access to this table. So, and there would be different personas, right? There would be data scientists, there would be data engineers, business users, business analysts, internal users, external users. There are different, right, different personas. To give them right access control, data governance is important. Moving on, data lifecycle management, right? It is important that the data is archived properly, it is house kept properly, right? If it is not being used anymore, it should be archived so that it can be used later, right? Some of the financial institutes have a regulatory requirement that the data should be available for 7 years and all. So in such cases, data lifecycle management plays an important role. So it's not just loading the data into the data lake, but also maintaining it, maintaining the whole life cycle of the data. Next is the data maturity, right? And data maturity itself is a very big topic. Maybe we'll cover this in one of our lecture series. Um, to keep it really short, here maturity, we can say the data quality, right? The data accuracy, the data completeness, right? uh, Whether it has any duplicate values, whether it has any null values, right? uh, all these aspects of data, right, it is important. We should analyze this while storing the data, and the report should be readily available, that what kind of the what is the quality of the data or the maturity of the data being present in the system. You don't want to run your reports on data which is incorrect or which is incomplete, right? So there should be measures or controls in place to ensure that all these aspects are looked at. Only the valid data or the correct data is available in data storage. Even the errors, the reject records, all those are important. Those also should be part of the data lake, but there should be clear bifurcation. There should be processes implemented to segregate data in such various buckets where you have valid data and erroneous data. And finally, right, one of the most important parts of data governance, and where still uh, a lot of things are not in place, is the data lineage. So what is data lineage? Okay, data lineage is if your data is flowing from the source systems, then it is going to several transformations, then to data lake, and from data lake it is going to some other system like warehouse. So the whole backtracking or the flow of this data is called a lineage, right? So if suppose there an user who asks, okay, from where does a particular attribute in a report is coming from, we should have this information. We should have the complete track, how the data is flowing from the source system, what kind of transformations are happening, whether it is getting joined with some other tables, whether that attributes is the derived attribute, or whether it is an hard coded value generated during this the implementation of the data lake or the warehouse, right? All these details should be present as part of data lineage. So again, this should be documented, or there should be some system which can generate this document dynamically, okay, based on the user requirement, right? So that is data lineage. So now that we have seen what data governance is, right, let's try to understand why it is really needed, right, and why is always important for anything, right? If you're trying to solve any problem statement, or you're trying to implement a new system, you're trying to design a system, or you're trying to code some logic, always try to ask for why you're doing this, right? Why is very important. Okay, only if you understand why, that you would be in a better position to implement the system. Okay. um, so okay, let's go through one by one. Data discoverability, right, as we spoke about it in the first slide. If you want your data lakes to give you the right value, okay, you don't want them to become just a data swamps, right, where data is just being stored and you are never using it, right? For that, you should make provisions for the data to be discovered easily, right? And how data can be discovered? Only if it has an associated metadata, right? See, metadata, I'll always keep on saying this, metadata is as important, or it is as critical as the data itself, right? um, if you want to discover the data which is present in your data lake, you need to have the right metadata management strategy. Okay, so what data discoverability means here, that whatever data is in your system, whatever data is in your data lake, user should be able to discover it easily. Okay, user should be able to access it and query it. At the first place, they should be able to know that, okay, this is the data which resides in the data lake. And how would they come to know about it? By the means of metadata. Okay, so why are data governance is essential? So that it makes the data lakes, the data in the data lakes, more discoverable. Okay, it also helps in having a better access control, right? You need to have a really good access control mechanism so that the various personas, right, who are accessing this data lake should be able to access only the data that is relevant to them, or only the data for which they are eligible to access the data, right? So you need to have a proper access control. You don't want someone who is not eligible to be accessing that data, especially the PI data for internal users. Okay. A sound DG strategy, right, would also help you to enable your data sharing. So if you want to share your data with, let's say, with some other departments, okay, the data, let's say there is some data which is owned by the sales department, but you want to share it with the marketing team, right? So having a proper data governance would help you to share the data, and that would eventually also help to avoid any data duplication, right? So these 2 points are interlinked. You don't want to create a duplicate copies of the data and then share that copy with the other departments. If you can share the original data, and by putting in a, by implementing a solution wherein the other teams are not able to make any changes, they are only able to read the data, right? If you can do that, then it will help you to avoid any data duplication, and thus it also helps you to having the single source of truth, which is very very important when it comes to data lakes, right? Else what happens, because there is so much of data and you keep on creating the duplicates, there is a lot of data redundancy, and then eventually there is no single version of truth. The users will eventually get confused, right, which is the um, right data or which is the latest data. Okay, because it can happen, right? The data is not the latest, it is stale in one of the copies. So all these things, if you want to avoid that, you need to have a sound data governance strategy to enable proper data sharing. The next point related to impact analysis, right, it's more on the data lineage front. If you have the data lineage, if you can in fact track the lineage of the data, if you can track from where the data is coming from, what kind of transformations are happening, then it really makes your life simple when you want to do an impact analysis. To give an example, let's say you have a table, customer table, there is a attribute for the customer location. Okay, and that location, right? So it was only 10 chars. Okay, the metadata, right, the data type, the length of that, the data type was, let's say, string, and the length was 10. But then later you realize 10 is not enough and you want to make it as 20. Now this particular attribute might be present in multiple tables. It might be flowing for multiple tables, right, where the name of the attribute is different. In some place it is location, in some table it is address, in some other location it is, let's say, region, right? It can be anything. So how can you do an impact analysis? You need to change this length in all these tables wherever this attribute is populating the other attributes, right? For that, if you want to do such impact analysis, you need to have something like the data lineage where you can backtrack, and then you would know, okay, these are the attributes which are dependent on this particular attribute, and then you can make the changes. So data lineage helps in tracking of this. And data spams, we already spoke about it. So yeah, so these are the important benefits, or these are the important factors to consider if you don't have data governance, and why you need to embark on this journey. Okay, so what are the various strategies? Okay, there are different data governance strategies, because there are multiple aspects, right? We spoke about metadata, we spoke about lineage, right? We spoke about data sharing, right? So all of these, to have your system to enable these, you can have different governance strategies. Okay, the first one is the data cataloging. You need to have a proper catalog for your data where you would be maintaining all your metadata. It can be a right place to have descriptions of your metadata, like let's say you have an attribute called cust id. Okay, you need to know what it what kind of data it is storing. Or a better example would be, if you have just have an attribute which says f underscore name, which really means his first name. So you can have these descriptions in your metadata. or the data catalog, right? You can also have a business glossary, right? Sometimes you have the technical attribute which doesn't make any business sense, or you cannot logically make any sense out of it what it really means, right? There would be just let's say an attribute where you say contact number, right? Now you don't know whether it's a mobile number or a home number or office number, right? Then you can add that as a part of your business glossary against each and every attribute. So cataloging is very important when it comes to having a sound strategy for data governance, right? The whole metadata management is a very important field when it comes to your data management. Second is you can have table level access controls, right? If you have objects, let's say in the storage is AWS S3, you can create tables on top of this and then have the access control at this table level, right? So that you don't have to do anything at the object level. So that's another strategy, and we'll look at it when we go through the one reference architecture. Third is ingest and publish. So it's more about you just ingest once, okay, whatever data is needed, you ingest one and you publish it so that anyone can use it, which can enable sharing. So again, both these points are interlinked. It's more about how do you share the data. How it's more about the strategy of ingesting the data once, or acquiring the data just once, or extracting it from the source system once, and then publishing it so that everyone within the organization can access it. And how do you implement the sharing controls that would be some taken care at the access control level, what strategy you have. But it is important to have this strategy so that again all the benefits that we saw that data sharing can enable will be required in this case. Role based access controls, since there are multiple personas, you can have different access control based on the role. So data engineers should have a different access control strategy. The data engineers, right, because they are moving the data across departments, across systems, they may have a access control wherein they can access all the data. Business analyst, that would be more specific to a department base. So if there is a sales department, they should have access to sales related data. If it's an HR department, they would have more access towards the employee details, but the other users should not have access to these. So yeah, the role based access control is one of the sound strategies that can be implemented. And finally, to have an end to end lineage of the data right from source systems to the data lake, along with a lot of transformation that is happening. Plus it would be really great if we can have that lineage up to the visualization layer where you have BI reports generated on this. Yeah, that would be an end-to-end lineage, but still it's not that easy. There's no proper system which can do that. If you are using multiple tools and technologies, if you have an hybrid system, if you are using on-prem and cloud, it becomes really difficult to have an end-to-end lineage. Anything within one particular ecosystem, it is still possible, but the moment you go outside a particular ecosystem and you have hybrid implementations, then it becomes a real challenge. And that brings us to this uh, one use case or a reference architecture if you're using AWS. Okay, so I'll try to explain this so that you get a better idea of what data governance in data lakes is and how can we implement it. Okay, or what are the key levers or the key considerations while implementing this. So there are two main services when it comes to AWS. Okay, AWS Glue Catalog and the Lake Formation, which plays a very vital role for implementing a data governance in data lakes. Okay, and how are these services used? Okay, let's go from a normal left hand side, right? The source systems. You might be getting files from some other sources, or you might be pulling data from databases, or there might be some APIs which you are hitting and getting the data. And then you have your data ingestion layer, right? This particular layer where you have different services through which you are getting the data. It can be a glue, it can be data migration service, it can be EMR, it can be Kinesis, right? There would be multiple ways through which you are getting the data. for this lecture, the important part is this, right? The governed data lake. So all this data that you ingest will sit into the data lake storage. Now in the data lake, right, you can create various layers, raw layer, cleansed layer, or transform layer, and different architects would, different architectures would have different names. If you're using Databricks, right, a standard naming standards that they use is the bronze, silver, and gold layers within data lake, right? Indian all this, they have the same meaning. So raw layer is where you ingest your data as is. Okay, it will be as is data. Cleanse layer is where you do some of the transformations. You do the data quality checks, you do the validations, right? So that you look for the data maturity that we spoke about. So by the time the data resides in your cleanse layer, it is more mature data, it is cleaner, it is more accurate, it is it is in the required naming standards. Okay, it is in the required it brings the required uniformity for the data. Okay, and finally the transform layer, where you can have some business transformations applied on top of this. You can do the required aggregations, but this is how your data lake would look like. Now you can use services like Glue Data Catalog to maintain the metadata of these objects, right? So there is a feature called, or there is a service within Glue called as Glue crawlers, wherein these crawlers can look at your files in your lake and then extract the schema out of that. Okay, it can extract the schema, it will look at the sample records, and it will predict for, okay, what can be the schema, and have the schema here in the Glue data catalog. So crawlers will look at the files, extract the schema, and maintain that schema within the catalog, right? So basically you are creating the tables for your files in Glue data catalog. And now this catalog would act as, your metadata management layer. So you should be doing this for all the layers, right? Not just raw layer, because you are going to query your cleanse layer, you might be querying your transform layer, you might be querying your raw layer, right? So do it for across all the layers. You build the catalog, you have your metadata into the catalog. Now how do you query this data, right? Once the data is in catalog, you can query it using Amazon Athena, right? So users would log into Athena and query this. So what is the role of lake formation, right? So lake formation brings in the much required access controls, right? So using lake formation, you can provide the access control. Okay, so let's say there is a user who is from the HR department. He should be able to access only the tables related to HR. There is a users from the sales department, they should be able to access only the sales table, right? So these kind of controls can be done using lake formation. Okay, you can explore lake formation in details, how this can be done. Okay, now lake formation can do it at a database level, it can do it at the table level also. In fact, there are ways to do it at the column level also. So if you have user A and B, A can access all the columns within a table, and you can restrict user B to access just 3 columns within the table. So even that is possible. And some of the new features, which might be still in preview, they also offer these controls at the cell level. Okay, so you can restrict an user to access a particular cell as well within a table. Okay, and there are many more features to lake formation, right? Using lake formation, you can enable the data sharing across the AWS accounts, right? You can share the data to the users of other accounts, that is possible. Also there is a lake formation admin who can control all these things, right? So you can have a separate role altogether to manage this whole access control, which again helps in having a sound data governance strategy. Okay, you can also enable your internal users, or rather you can restrict your internal users to some of the PI columns, right? So suppose there are mobile numbers, and you want some of the users, internal users, right, should not be able to access that. You can do that, right? Since there is a column level access control, it can be done. So even your PI data management, right, it won't help you in masking that, or encrypting or tokenizing that, okay, PI data, but it can help to prevent someone accessing that PI data. Okay, that is the most basic thing which is required, and lake formation can do that easily, which is an out of box feature. You don't have to do any custom coding for that. It's just a matter of not giving access to that PI column to the users, right? So using these two, right, you can implement a basic data governance strategy, okay, to form a governed data lakes. So what they are going to bring you here, they are going to create the tables for your objects, create the metadata for these objects. Uh, Lake formation can give the access control as well. It can also help you in the data sharing, right? All these features are there. And again, there are some new features which have come up, right? In the December 2021 reinvent, a lot of new features have come in lake formation. There is also a feature to support the ACID operations, okay, on this data lake. So far you must have seen that S3 is immutable. You cannot update something, right? Any of the tables you cannot update that, but there are some features added, ACID features properties are added. It uses Apache Iceberg at the backend to do that, okay, but that's still a new feature. But if you still don't want to use it, you can still go with the basic features wherein you can create the tables and prevent access control, right? And you should have a strategy by which any user, right, who wants to access this object should access it to Athena only, okay? They should be querying the data. Don't give access, direct access to your underlying objects, okay? So that you can have a more governed access, right? So that you can restrict the access to particular tables or particular columns. If you give access to the direct objects, you cannot control this. So if you have your users, they want to access it, give it to lake formation. So this is how, a very, very simple approach for implementing a very basic data governance strategy for AWS implementation on a data lake. Okay. We have not spoken about other things. If you want to do some data quality, data profiling checks, right? You can use a service called Glue Data Brew, which can be used for data profiling to understand the null values, okay, or any other such, issues within your data. If you want to do some data quality, there's also a library provided by Amazon called DEEQU, which is a Python based package which you can use for any data quality checks as well. There is nothing on the data linear side, right? You cannot really track how the data is moving from the source system till the end, or even on the if you're planning to create something like a master data management, as of now there is no specific service for that, but you can always do a custom implementation for these things. So that's it from the data governance perspective. Maybe you can go back and explore these two services, Glue Data Catalog and Lake Formation. They provide a lot of features, and it can really benefit you to have a proper governed data lakes. That's it for today's lecture. See you in another series next week. Thank you.